Lauren, we have made it through 70 biggest hit based off of this weekend's draft.
I love her focusing on the losers. Like, how negative Nancy are we? But I like it because
we'll get to the winners eventually. But
the
right
losers
now,
are so much more fun
the
to
guys
talk
that
about.
Took the hit?
Okay, so my biggest one, I think actually you snagged before I did. This is what happens when you wait to look at the show sheet, folks, because he took the good one. But there are some other ones I think took a pretty big hit. So for me, it was kind of a toss-up between Hayden Hurst with drafting of Kyle Pitts, obviously, who, of course, the 49ers did not select Kyle Pitts. For anyone who does not know me, you will if you keep watching the show, but I was being outrageously sarcastic. So I did not actually think that they were going to go with that pick, just so we're all on the same page. But I think for me is one of my favorite players is Tyler Boyd. And I don't love Jamar Chase going to the Bengals to be reunited with Joe Burrow. That really scares me because there's T. Higgins is still there. Not only does it bother me just on the volume sense for Tyler Boyd, but also it bothers me that they didn't take an offensive lineman. Like, what are you doing? So I get it, but I don't like it. And I especially don't like it for fantasy. So it's just garbage because Chase and Burrow in 2019, because Jamar Chase sat out in 2020, right? He opted out. Mm-hmm. I think so. Yeah. Anyway, so in 2019, I think so. Yeah. So 2019, he had 84 receptions, he meaning Jamar Chase, 84 receptions for over 1,700 yards and 20 touchdowns. That's nothing to sneeze at. And if there's that chemistry there, that is likely going to happen again. Like it's like a security blanket, you know? And I hate that for Tyler Boyd. And I don't like it for T. Higgins. Ooh, sorry. I'm shaking my desk around here. Don't worry. It's not an earthquake. I'm fine, everyone.
Yeah, I think Tyler Boyd definitely takes a hit. And yes, so does T. Higgins. And it's kind of tough to know who is going to take the bigger hit out of the two of them. I mean, that went from looking like one of the most explosive fantasy duos that you could have with T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. I mean, in my best ball drafts, I was taking Tyler Boyd consistently in the 4th and 5th round. He just seemed like a screaming value. But yeah, things are really messy in there now. I think that both guys are going to take a hit. It's kind of crazy that we saw T. Higgins last year just put together this great season. He's got the prototypical build to be that X receiver that can just be an absolute alpha. And then he just gets replaced like that. And now you've got it's a mess pretty much in Cincinnati. So good for Joe Burrow, but I think for fantasy purposes, I think everybody wanted to see him go with Penny Sewell.
Like, is it good?
I mean, having another weapon, you could be right. Yeah, I mean, I think protection probably would have been a little bit better. And it's funny, you know, from the outside, just about everybody I've talked to in the fantasy community agrees that the Bengals should have gone O-line. But then when I talk to my friends that are Bengals fans, they unanimously wanted Chase. And I get it. You know, it's sexy getting that top wide receiver that can, you know, has the history with Joe Burrow. And I understand that. But just from me, that one left me scratching my head just a little bit. Yeah. So there are a lot of losers. I mean, we could spend the entire hour just talking about how many people are just absolutely screwed in fantasy now because of this draft. But for me, the big one has got to be James Robinson. And you already knew that I was going with this one. James Robinson, it's absolutely heartbreaking. And a lot of people saw this with the writing on the wall. You know, he was an undrafted free agent, which typically they don't have long careers. And we saw this with Philip Lindsay just a few years ago, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, and then replaced by Melvin Gordon. Saw with Jordan Howard when the Bears were going through their rebuild in 2016, 2017, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. Now he's struggling to even find a job in the NFL. And that's exactly what happened with James Robinson. And now, right now, what you've got is Urban Meyer saying that it's going to be James Robinson and Carlos Hyde splitting the early down duties with Travis Etienne playing a third down role. I don't believe that one bit. I think that they went out and got their guy. Right. They had an early 2nd round pick. If they wanted to, they could have waited and still gotten Etienne with that 3rd round or that 2nd round pick, but they wanted him. He is clearly their guy. They've got a history together, and I think that's why they went out and got him. So I want to believe the smoke and mirrors right now that are coming from Urban Meyer. I think it is going to be the Travis Etienne show in Jacksonville. So he's going to be shooting up draft boards. James Robinson is going to be falling quickly. He's the biggest loser. But another big one, and this is another guy that I've really been ringing the bell for this offseason, is Marquise Brown. Marquise Brown is somebody who looked like he finally got it together. His rookie season was very boom or bust. He got off to a very slow start in 2020, but towards the end of the season, into the playoffs, he started looking like a legitimate weapon. And then the Ravens went out and drafted Rashaad Bateman in the 1st, and then they also went out and got Tylan Wallace in the 2nd. So those are two big additions that instantly pull the rug out from Marquise Brown. He went from being the number 1 pass catching option on that team to arguably the number 3, really. Really
Yeah,
quickly.
and just to kind of piggyback off what you're saying with James Robinson and the Travis Etienne, when it comes to the draft, I'm going to be interested to see over the summer how their ADP changes, average draft position, for anyone who's maybe new to fantasy football, and just to see how far Travis Etienne goes up, how far James Robinson falls, because Travis Etienne may not be the number one guy right off the bat. It may take several weeks for that to develop. We're just not really quite sure. So for me, I'm more conservative when it comes to the possibility of running backs by committee. I may just stay away from both of them and just not even bother drafting any of that until maybe it becomes a little bit clearer. Maybe there could be a trade opportunity. I'm not sure, but I really like to stay away from those RBBCs, running back by committees, as much as I can. So it not only is it annoying just for James Robinson, it's annoying because here's another team that we don't know what is going to happen with the running back room. And there's enough of that going on right now that I don't like it for fantasy.
And there's there's something to be said for that, because there are people that want to go wide receiver early and then they want to wait on the running back, and they'll happily take those guys in hopes that they can carve out a role for themselves. But I'm with you. When it comes to the running back by committees, I'd rather just almost not touch them at all than roll the dice. Like right now, if it's Leonard Fournette or Ronald Jones, people are asking me who I should take. My answer is nobody. Take a wide receiver in that round and just completely get off of Bucs running backs altogether.
If
but
you can.
Anyway, thank you everybody who has tuned in. This is episode 2 of Football Guys' newest show, 2 Point Stance. Just want to remind you that we stream this live to our Twitter at 12 p.m. Eastern every single Tuesday, and then you can find it at 7 p.m. Eastern on the Football Guys YouTube page, which is youtube.com/FootballGuysTV. I'm Dave Kluge. I'm here with Lauren Carpenter, and last week we talked about it. We were scraping the bottom of the barrel, just whatever we could. There wasn't a lot of news. But now we've got the draft. We've got a lot of big news with some potential names on the move that we're going to talk about as well. So we finally have some news to talk about. So I am excited. Let's not waste any more time with the intro. Let's dive right in. We talked about the losers already, but now let's talk about the, glass half full type of people. Who are the winners? Who came out of this draft with a ADP value, whatever you want to call it, significantly higher than they did before the NFL draft?
There's a lot going on here. So I kind of approached this in the lens of maybe for real football as opposed to fantasy, which kind of now helps no one because we're a fantasy show. So sorry about that, but I'm going to do it anyway. But I absolutely love Devonta Smith to the Eagles. That is one of those things I wanted to see happen. I'm glad it happened. And I can't wait to see how well Jalen Hurts can gel and connect with Devonta Smith. There's a little bit of history there, I believe. I'd have to go back and just double check on that. Not much, but I don't think that's going to be the thing that's going to start building that chemistry over there. But just being able to have a solid, fast, exceedingly exceptional, which I know is very repetitive. Sorry about that. Alliteration is like my thing. Really good route runner. I'm excited to see what Devonta Smith can do. This may be a little bit more for dynasty than for redraft, but I think even in redraft, if Devonta Smith falls enough or stays low enough in ADP, I do not mind taking a shot on taking him because there really is nobody else. And not only do I love this for Devonta Smith and Jalen Hurts, I like it for Dallas Goedert as well, because the more weapons that you have on offense, sure, it does take away from the volume. There's more mouths to feed, that argument. But it also does free up receivers as well. So I really like this for Dallas Goedert and for his opportunity. So there's a lot going on there that I am really excited to see. And I think that was one of my favorite picks of the draft.
And the other guy you didn't even mention is Jalen Reagor, who isn't, the same exact player as Devonta Smith, but he's another small, speedy guy. So you've got two guys that can absolutely stretch the fields on both sides now. So I think that's going to be great for Jalen Hurts. We talked about it last week. I'm not going to keep, talking about Jalen Hurts every single week, but Jalen Hurts is my guy. So go out and, he's somebody that you should be taking a deep look at, because with his rushing upside, with the receivers and weapons that they have available now, Jalen Hurts is going to be that dude this year. I'm excited for it.
You convinced me. After they picked Devonta Smith, I remembered all of those points that you made. And I have to say, they made a lot of sense in that lens. So
Jalen Hurts is going to be the guy this year.
I'm at the train station looking at the train, wondering if I want to jump on it or not. But you got me. You got me intrigued.
Kyler Murray last year, Lamar Jackson the year before, Mahomes the year before that. This year, it's going to be Jalen Hurts. Get ready for it. But for me, the biggest winner, and this is going to sound funny for me to say this, that I'm kind of upset that I have to say this, considering I have a Bears helmet behind me. But I think that David Montgomery is the biggest winner. And, David Montgomery is somebody I had kind of been, I don't want to say fading because I haven't done a lot of redraft drafts this year, but looking at how he finished the last year, that stretch at the end of the season, I figured that was unsustainable. Tariq Cohen was coming back. Nat Nagy was taking the play calling back. I just thought that there were a lot of red flags for drafting David Montgomery, and I was starting to push him further and further down my rankings list every single week. But Justin Fields, suddenly the Chicago Bears have a franchise quarterback, which is going to be awesome. That's going to open up more opportunities for David Montgomery. In addition to drafting Justin Fields, they went out and got 2 offensive linemen that are going to be instant starters. So I mean, I'm not going to gush about it too much because I don't want my fandom to show on this show, but I am
too late.
Thrilled. Like, I could not be happier with the Bears draft. I'm going to get that out of me right now. But because of all this, I'm no longer fading David Montgomery. David Montgomery has worked his way up into a middling RB2 for me, and I think he actually has the opportunity now to exceed that. I'm still a little bit worried about Tariq Cohen, Damian Williams, some of these other guys, but at the end of the day, David Montgomery is in a great position. He might see 250 carries this year. He's still going to get some catches out of the backfield, and now there's an actual quarterback that can command this field. I'm done. I'm just going to gush too much, but David Montgomery is somebody that I'm very, very excited about right now.
I know, but don't be too excited because we don't want his ADP to start going through the roof. So you can gush. I'll be like, no.
Which that's kind of what happens is like you see these market discrepancies, and that's why I love best ball so much. I know the show we talk about redraft, but right now there's a lot of best ball going on, and that's what makes it so fun is because there are crazy market discrepancies. 2 weeks ago, I was able to draft Joe Mixon in the 4th round. Now Joe Mixon's going in the early 2nd. So similar to David Montgomery right now, he's going in that 4th round. He's going to start to creep his way up, and I think that by the time we get to August and people are drafting fantasy teams, David Montgomery's probably going to be going late 2nd round would be my guess. So if you're doing any early drafts, go out and grab him now, but expect that value to rise quickly, just like you should expect Devonta Smith's value to rise quickly.
Another thing
now, let's stay on the topic. Yeah.
For the masses, I'm going to interrupt you here. Sorry about that, Dave. So another thing, too, is that as the summer goes, we're going to be hearing, more news, more stuff about players that's going to change their ADP as we're going forward. So my piece of advice, one of the things that I learned is that when you hear those things about player X, see what other players in that skill position it affects, because you never know who is going to be falling down. I have hair it's like stuck in my eyelashes. It's trying to mess me up, and I'm not going to let it win. I'm not going to let it win. But back to the ADP, the show must go on. So just for example, let's say something flashy comes out about just Travis Etienne, since we already spoken about him. Then he starts skyrocketing up the draft boards. Maybe that drops David Montgomery, and you can find value in those players as well. So don't let those players really fall off of your radar as you're going down just because there's shiny new things going on about other ones. Just throwing that out there as my 2 cents.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. Now, I want to stick on the topic of winners and losers a little bit. We talked about some skill position players, but let's talk about quarterbacks. And since, I don't know, we're feeling negative today, we started the show off with the losers. Let's start with the losers on quarterbacks too. So which quarterbacks do you think took the biggest hit from this weekend's draft?
I'm not sure about the biggest hit, so I actually don't know if I'm answering this question appropriately, but I'm just going to answer it the way it first popped into my head. Again, this is more of a lens through real football, which will affect fantasy, but I think Russell Wilson, he needed some offensive linemen, right? Like offensive linemen, excuse me. So it's kind of like that thing I was saying about Joe Burrow, who needs protection. That's kind of what happened with the Seahawks offense. The wheels fell off. He was on the ground more than he was upright. I really think that he needed a little bit more help in protection as opposed to grabbing another wide receiver, because they didn't have a first round pick. They had traded that to get Jamal Adams. So they didn't pick until the 2nd round, but their first pick was another wide receiver. Like, do you really need that? You have Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. Like, what are you doing? And you just got in Gerald Everett as the tight end. I understand that's not as flashy and as sexy, but it's still another pass catcher. Like, you need protection. So I kind of feel like Russell Wilson may be the one that kind of lost the most on that one.
Yeah, it's always tough to say who the losers are. So I appreciate that you thinking outside the box a little bit. But yeah, Russell Wilson's somebody where we can kind of look back at this draft and say, what were the Seahawks thinking? I agree with you. Obviously, the chalky answer is going to be, Andy Dalton or, some of the other veterans that were replaced by rookies, which I'm just going to let you take this one right now because I know you want to rub it in my face after hyping up Cam Newton. Yeah, I know I hyped up Cam Newton last week. So
I did have it in my notes, everyone. Yes. Okay. Cam Newton. He is the loser in this draft because I'm sorry. Yes. I don't think that he is going to be a full season starter. Something's going to happen. He got hurt or whatever it is that they make up, and Mac Jones is going to come in. again, I think it's a similar situation. I wouldn't be surprised. I know we'll talk about this later, but I wouldn't be surprised if Justin Fields is the week one starter. I mean, it wasn't awesome for those veteran quarterbacks to have these amazing, flashy rookie quarterbacks coming in to take the NFL by storm. So yeah, Cam Newton, biggest loser. Sorry, my friend.
Yeah, it does hurt. It does hurt. And I think I had taken Cam Newton in like
I laughed, everybody. I laughed out loud.
It was brutal. I wasn't expecting that, but I thought that they had given some, and who knows what's going to happen. But I thought that they had shown that they wanted to go forward with Cam by giving him that extension. And there's a chance that maybe Max sits this whole year. But I think that you're right. I think that Cam Newton is going to be the week one starter, and I think that we'll see that change of guard mid-season. We'll see how it plays out. Now for me, somebody that jumps out to me a little bit as a loser, and this isn't somebody, again, thinking a little bit outside the box, is Ryan Tannehill. And it's somebody that, he's put together some great seasons, and he has gotten out of the shadow of Adam Gase and has done great things in Tennessee. But I just wonder who he's supposed to throw the ball to now. Like, it seemed like they were going to go out and they just kept passing on these good wide receivers. And like almost every single round, I'd see Tennessee's pick coming up. I'd see a wide receiver on the board, and I was like, all right, this is it. Tennessee's going to get their guy. And then they would just go a complete opposite way. So it throws me off a little bit on Ryan Tannehill. I think that A.J. Brown, we talked about this last week, I think that he is literally in a position to see 200-plus targets. The NFL record right now is 205, and A.J. Brown could realistically beat that this year. Because there's nobody else.
Especially with 17 games.
Exactly, yeah. So we've got Anthony Ferguson and Josh Reynolds are the only other real receiving threats there. We know Derrick Henry doesn't push the ball out of the backfield. Ooh. Yeah. So there really isn't much happening right now in Tennessee. So Ryan Tannehill, he's been, kind of built up as this sneaky guy that you can take late in your draft. That's going to be able to put up QB1 numbers. And sure, it might happen every once in a while, but he's not somebody that I think I'm going to be able to rely on week in and week out because they just don't really have the weapons there. I wanted them to take Rashad Bateman. I wanted them to take Kadarius Toney. There were just so many guys that would have made sense for that team, and they opted to ignore all of them. So good news for A.J. Brown. Terrible news for Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah, now, what? I think this is really good news for Derrick Henry, too. So, Ryan Tannehill looks like he's going to be the loser here. But real quick on Mac Jones. Over, under, let's see. I'm just going to pick a week. I say by week 5, Mac Jones is the starter. What do you think?
Now, I think it's going to be a little bit later in the season than that.
Okay, I'm going the under then.
Week 5 is exactly what I have predicted for the Andy Dalton Justin Fields switch. I think that's going to be week 5 just because I've seen that too many times in the past. I think that the Patriots are a little bit more fundamentally sound. They're able to exercise that patience. They don't give in to what the fans and the media want the way that the Chicago Bears do. So I think that it's going to go a little bit later into the season. I think that if they are at a losing record around week 10 or 11, that's when we'll see Mac Jones come in. But if Cam Newton goes out and wins games, it's his job to lose. So I think that if they can go out, use the beefed up offensive line and Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, all of these additions in the offseason, if they can make that click and actually win, I think that Cam Newton could finish out the season. But if they are losing and there's 4 or 5 weeks left in the season, then I think we might see the switch to Mac Jones.
Okay. I think they're going to lose starting.
So. But and it's certainly possible. And there's so much gray area that's another situation that I'm probably just going to be avoiding. Unless I can get Cam Newton in like the very last round of a very deep draft, I'm probably just staying away from that quarterback situation altogether. Now, we talked about the losers for quarterbacks, but there were some quarterbacks that got a big boost. We already talked a little bit about Jalen Hurts getting this boost, getting his guy Devonta Smith. But who are some other quarterbacks that you think are seeing a tremendous boost in their value because of the draft?
Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan is the one that sticks out to me the most because of Kyle Pitts. I swear to God, I'm not obsessed with Kyle Pitts. Maybe I'm a little bit. Okay, maybe I am just a little bit. But yeah, I think this is a huge boost for Matt Ryan. And don't forget, they're a pass-heavy team. I have notes on this. Let me just make sure I get these numbers right. So they were 4th in passing attempts with 628. They were 5th in passing yards with over 4,300. That's a lot. And their running game is not very exciting. They have Mike Davis. Okay. And they did not go out in the draft and really get anyone very exciting
Speaking of another winner, Mike Davis. All right, sorry.
For sure, right?
Go ahead.
No, I get it, for sure. But the volume here, the trend, I should say, which has always been for the Falcons, is the passing game. You add another explosive weapon to the Falcons offense with Kyle Pitts. Heck yeah, gimme. Absolutely. So you have Julio Jones, you have Calvin Ridley, you have Kyle Pitts, you have Hayden Hurst, and practically no run game. Yeah, give me Matt Ryan. I'm in. Sold.
Yeah, I could not agree with you more. I think that, and we also see it's kind of funny, like it's a fluke, but it's like Matt Ryan is that every other year quarterback. It's like one year he is a bona fide QB1, and then he sucks the next year. And last year was his off year. So, buy on that odd year Matt Ryan, because that's when he does it. So a little bit fluky, not too much hardcore analysis there, but it's something that traditionally we have seen is Matt Ryan every other year, and this is the year. And yeah, we talk about it. Kyle Pitts is a matchup nightmare. You can't put a cornerback on him. You can't put a linebacker on him. You can't put a safety on him. But Julio Jones is the same exact type of player. I mean, you've got two of the biggest mismatched nightmares in the NFL on the same team, playing indoors. I mean, yeah, Matt Ryan is a guy that is going to be shooting up draft boards. I think that he has every opportunity in the world to finish as a QB1. Now, you want to hear my winner, and this is something where I'm having to eyeball my rankings, and I might do something a little crazy that's gonna ruffle some feathers, but Lamar Jackson, baby, he's the winner for me. I had him locked in as the QB2 behind Patrick Mahomes.
Explain yourself.
They added Rashaad Bateman and they added Tylan Wallace. They added two great receivers, and that's exactly what he needs. In addition to that, they went out and got Ben Cleveland, that huge tackle out of Georgia, who's going to be a day one starter. So he's a big interior lineman. He can get down the field and help with the rushing game a little bit more. I don't understand why people are giving Lamar Jackson any sort of grief, like at all. I feel like I've seen this conversation on Twitter, like Lamar Jackson has no more excuses. What excuses does he need? He was an MVP 2 years ago. He's had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. He's brought his team to the playoffs in consecutive seasons. This man is doing everything that you want to see from a young quarterback. So they went out and they rewarded him by getting him some great wide receivers. Like I said, right now, Lamar Jackson is my QB2 behind Patrick Mahomes, but I have a feeling that's going to be changing in the coming weeks, and I think Lamar Jackson is going to be my QB1 to start off this redraft 2021 season. It's just they did everything that you want to do to help out a young quarterback. They got him explosive receiving weapons, and they beefed up his offensive line. I think you could just mark it in pen that Lamar Jackson is going to rush for 1,000 yards again, and now he's got the receiving weapons to boost that even more. So Lamar Jackson, biggest quarterback winner in the draft for me.
Well, just to piggyback off of what you were saying there too, I also really like Mark Andrews still. I know last year was incredibly disappointing, but I mean, I know this may be stating the obvious, but Mark Andrews, his production was very closely tied to Lamar Jackson. Again, I know that's stating the obvious. Thank you very much. I get it. But that's important to remember. When Lamar Jackson did not play well in the first 11 weeks, I think it was, when he wasn't passing, when he wasn't playing well, Mark Andrews wasn't doing very well either. Now, when Lamar Jackson started playing better after he, had that incident that we won't talk about, he started doing really well. And I have to go back and look at the numbers to see exactly where Mark Andrews finished, but it was good. He did well. So for me, when I'm looking at
points per game over the whole season.
Yeah. And when I'm looking at where I want to make sure I either get a tight end or what am I doing in the draft based on the rounds, do I spend up to take Mark Andrews? Is that going to be where I think this is going to be an excellent year for Mark Andrews? And I hope more people sour on him so that he keeps falling down the draft board, because I really like what is going on in Baltimore as well. And I do agree with you that it's going to be another, very close race between Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes when it comes to who's the QB1 and who's the QB2 this year. And I'm excited to see it with an off season, with preseason, with all sorts of really fun things that we have this year. Goodbye 2020. It's going to be cool. I'm excited.
Yeah. And I'm with you on Mark Andrews. He's one of the guys. It's going to take a little bit of time for Lamar Jackson to develop chemistry with these new receivers, but we've already seen him and Andrews have that chemistry already. And anytime he's in trouble, when the pocket breaks down, when he's on the run, there's one person that he's looking for, and that's Mark Andrews. And I don't think that's going to change. It might change over the years, but I think at least to start off 2021, it's going to be the same exact thing. Mark Andrews is going to be his guy. So let's stay on the topic of quarterbacks, but let's get away from the draft a little bit. I feel like it would be crazy to not talk about this, since it's if you turn on ESPN, it's all they're talking about right now. But let's get your opinion on this. Aaron Rodgers wants out of Green Bay. He gave a short list of teams that he wants to go through to. What are you expecting with this Aaron Rodgers situation? Do you think that he is really going to leave? And do you think that there's some validity to him going to Denver? And do you think that had anything to do with Denver passing on a quarterback at pick number 7?
That is super duper curious because I honestly do not have an opinion on what I think is going to happen. And the reason I say that is because I wouldn't be surprised if he stays, which would be like normal. You know, it would be weird to see Aaron Rodgers in anything other than a Green Bay jersey. Am I right? But then I wouldn't be
just
surprised.
As weird as seeing Tom Brady in a Bucs jersey. Like it just breaks your brain the first time you see it.
It is very messed up. It's very messed up. But then I also wouldn't be surprised if he went somewhere else. Now, where he's going to go, I think that's going to be completely up to Aaron Rodgers. I have no clue because I can see both things happening. But what really is weird to me about this whole situation, a couple things actually. The first part of this is that this drama started last year when they drafted Jordan Love. It actually started with Jake Kummerow. Like he came out, this is according to Ian Rappaport. He had brought this up on the NFL Network, but he had come out, Aaron Rodgers had come out and praised Jake Kummerow, how much he was just this great integral piece of the offense. And the very next day, the Packers released him. Bye-bye. And Aaron Rodgers was like, well, what's going on? I mean, I guess he was. That's what I would do anyway. So then there's all of these little things. It's the straw that broke the camel's back. And I think that straw was Jordan Love. So he comes out last year and has this MVP year. Now, to me, that kind of is the hatchet buried? Is that what I should be thinking right now? Because when I'm hearing him complain, I'm like, I thought you were already over this because that happened last year. Like that was so last season. I know that's not what anyone says anymore, but I just did. But I can understand this is a growing issue and a growing concern. I understand that. Also, I don't believe it was Aaron Rodgers himself that leaked this information. It was somebody outside of Aaron Rodgers that he had spoken to. We don't know who that was. We're not quite sure who the whistleblower is. And it was very convenient timing right by the draft. So that in itself is a little weird. But then the other half of this that I don't understand at all is the Packers planned to not have Aaron Rodgers. They went out and they got Jordan Love for a reason. They probably thought that Aaron Rodgers might be done or close to done. Okay, sorry, he's not. But you should have already made plans for this to happen because he's either done because he's too old or he's done because he's mad at you. So this should have already been planned for, which I thought you were doing already. So why are you surprised? And why are you now fighting to get him back? Like, you should already have this planned out. So this whole thing is kind of a hot mess. Well, it's not kind of, it is. It's a huge hot mess. But what I'm really failing to grasp outside of being like on the playground in middle school. That is kind of where I see this. And I'm like, what are y'all doing? Like, what is happening right now? It's crazy. I don't even know. It's verklempt.
It feels like it's getting very petty and just like slinging mud all over the place. When the story first came out, I mean, the timing of it, I was just like, all right, well, this is just a lame attempt by Aaron Rodgers to make sure that the Packers go out and draft a wide receiver. A couple hours before the draft, he was clearly frustrated last year when they didn't address the wide receiver position. So I said, all right, this story's coming out right before the first round. Green Bay sitting there at 29. I think that this is just Rodgers' way of saying, hey, draft me a wide receiver or I'm gone. And then, like we all expected, the Packers went out and drafted a cornerback in Eric Stokes and, again, completely disregarded the wide receiver position. So there's a part that it's like almost like the Packers are fanning the flames in a way. Like they could appease to Aaron Rodgers to try to make him happy, but instead they'd rather just continue going against the grain, beefing up the defense, not bringing in these free agent wide receivers, not drafting wide receivers, all the things that made him upset to begin with, they're just kind of playing into. So as a Bears fan, I've watched Aaron Rodgers his entire career, and I will say he's a bit of a crybaby. This is something that every couple of years you see Aaron Rodgers kind of stir up some sort of drama about something, whether it's stuff with his family or with the organization or teammates, whatever it is, he's always got some sort of drama following him. But this situation, for whatever reason, feels a bit more real. And now you've got the whole Jeopardy thing in there as well, that he's using his opportunity to possibly host Jeopardy as a leverage to get his way. I mean, the whole situation is bizarre. And I've talked to a lot of people about this. I talked to Sigmund Bloom over at Footballguys, and I wanted to get his, and he said, I'm leaning 50-50, maybe slightly towards him leaving. I've talked to other people, and I haven't heard anybody say more than 60-40. When I ask them, what are the chances of Rodgers leaving? Everyone is 50-50, 60-40. Nobody really knows. It is a bizarre situation. So we can talk about it till we're blue in the face. And that's exactly why if you turn on ESPN right now, that's all they're talking about, because it is nothing but speculation and just such a weird, crazy concept to even think about.
Yeah. And what is so nuts is just like you were saying, they're like fanning the flames and then they're like, oh, no, we love you. Like, insult, insult, insult. No. We love you. Like, this sounds like a really unhealthy relationship that probably needs therapy. Like, if this were like an actual married couple, I'd be like, you guys have something wrong. You need to go to counseling. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's kind of how.
What's the meme you see on Twitter all the time? It's like a man would rather go host Jeopardy than go to therapy. Like, that's literally what we're dealing with right now with Aaron Rodgers.
There you go.
But anyway, Lauren, we got to plug this for just a minute. Obviously, if you're watching this show, it's because you are a serious fantasy player. So consistently winning at fantasy is challenging, and it takes a lot of time. So what you should do if you want to leg up on the competition is go out and get yourself the Footballguys premium subscription. It'll give you an edge, and really the coolest thing is it makes the winning decisions for you. So go ahead and go to Footballguys right now and sign up for this. Even better, it's our way of saying thanks to serious players because we're offering an early bird discount that's available right now. So head to footballguys.com, click on the orange button in the upper right that says join now, and that'll take you to the early bird discount pricing. We will do the picks and you will do the winning. Have you checked that out yet? I know you're new to the football team. Have you seen what the premium account offers? I mean, it really just couldn't make it easier for you. It takes everything specialized
for years. Like, literally, this is one of the reasons before I was on the team, I knew about this because I have it. Like, it is essential. The amount of research in it is just through the roof, but the tools are also awesome. It is something I would definitely, especially with the earlier bird special. I don't know if y'all saw my face, but I was like, what? Yeah, that is amazing. And it's something that I love, and I've used it, and I'm going to be using it again. It's invaluable.
Yeah. It's worth every penny. You can link multiple leagues up to it. You put your league scoring systems in there, so it'll actually adjust your ranking based on the Footballguys projection to make sure. I mean, just a great product. So go to footballguys.com, early bird discount. We're offering that right now, and hopefully that ad read is a little bit smoother next week. But anyway, back to value changes. Who is one player that you are taking a deeper look at now that we are out of the draft? Like somebody that wasn't really catching your eye all that much before, but now that we're through the draft, it's like, I'm a little intrigued by this player. Who's that guy for you, Lauren?
You know, no one really stood out to me. When I read this, I was like, wow, I really can't think of anyone until I really kind of started digging into it. And I will tell you one name that is interesting to me, and it's Terrace Marshall Jr. out of LSU going to the Panthers. That one is one that I normally really don't focus a lot on rookie wide receivers. I just don't. I think it takes them about a year to really develop for what I need in redraft. So I generally don't really look at them too much. But this one is interesting, mostly because the Panthers are incredibly interesting to me. They've lost Curtis Samuel, which is, I know that he's not, wide receiver one, but he did have 97 targets last year. He was involved a little bit in the run game. Christian McCaffrey is healthy. They're going to have Sam Darnold.
Too.
Exactly. So it's I'm interested because DJ Moore is obviously still going to be their wide receiver one, but what is Robbie Anderson's role going to be in this offense? So, he's kind of like that down threat. I think sometime he played the slot. I'd have to go back and really kind of digest his film. This is just kind of me talking off the top of my head here, but I'm curious to see how much of those 97 targets are going to go to DJ Moore and how many of them are going to go to Robbie Anderson and how many can he take away? He meaning Marshall. Can he take away from these guys? And is this going to be an asset for Sam Darnold? I'm not sure if Marshall himself is going to be worth rostering quite yet. Maybe for a flyer if I just want to have some space at the end of a draft or something. But I'm really curious for the weapon that he provides as another, I don't want to say mouth to feed because that kind of sounds negative, but as another weapon for Sam Darnold. I'm curious to see what this is going to do for the Panthers.
Yeah, I think that's a great one to look at. And I think this helps Sam Darnold tremendously. I mean, he's already got the rapport with Robbie Anderson from their days in the Jets.
But can he capitalize?
That's a whole nother question. Yeah, I mean, he's got, we were talking earlier, like, Lamar Jackson doesn't have any excuses, which I think is such a lame topic to talk about. But really, Sam Darnold is somebody who doesn't have any excuses after this point. He's got one of the freshest offensive coordinators in the league. He's got some great pass weapons. So this really is, ride or die time for Sam Darnold. And they already picked up his fifth-year option, so he's going to be back for 2 years now in Carolina. And they have just surrounded him with weapons. So, yeah, he's a good one to keep an eye out on. I would definitely be interested in looking at Terrace Marshall. But the one for me that I hadn't even really given a second thought to prior to the draft was Amon-Ra St. Brown. And you might know his brother, Equiminius. I believe that's how you say it, right? Equiminius St. Brown, the guy on the Packers. I hadn't really thought about St. Brown all too much, but he got drafted by the Lions, and the Lions might have the worst receiving core in the entire league.
No, they do. They do.
They do.
They do. Yes. There's no might.
They do. Yes. Thank you for pulling me in. I was a little bit too soft on that.
I got you.
The Lions have the worst receiving core in the league. And I don't think that Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be able to plug himself in and become the instant wide receiver one, but he's going to get a healthy share of targets as a rookie, which really that's the one thing you're looking for. I mean, all the talent in the world is great, but if you're buried on the depth chart, it doesn't really help that much. He's in a position where he could easily see 100 plus targets as a rookie. So I am really kind of intrigued by him. He's not especially big. He's not especially fast or anything like that, but he's athletic and he's agile in open space. So if they can start drawing up some plays to get him involved in the screen game, jet sweeps, whatever it may be, he's got that ability. So he's somebody that I'm probably going to be drafting a lot of in the late rounds, just because, like I said, he could easily lead all rookies in targets, which is kind of crazy.
And he's a warm body. He's a warm body on the Lions offense that can catch a ball. Like that by itself means volume. And by the way, two best names, I think, in the NFL. I'm sure there's other ones too, but the ones that I love, Equinemius, that is so much fun to say. And I don't know how he pronounces his name, but I like to pronounce it Amon-Ra because that is so Egyptian and you sound like you're a pharaoh. Let's go. That is the coolest. That's the coolest name ever. Like, what's your name? Lauren, what's your name? Amon-Ra. Like, what? That is cool. I want to be your friend.
I probably said it wrong. I haven't heard his name discussed too much. I'm sure somebody will, fix the
I've heard it so many different ways. So I'm just going with the way that I like to say it because I love the History Channel and I especially love Egyptian history. So saying Amon-Ra is really fun to say.
I love it. We'll just nickname him.
Summon something.
We'll just nickname him the Pharaoh through the season. We'll just make it nice and easy. The Pharaoh. Great nickname. I love it.
Confetti.
So last week, one of the things that we talked about at length was how this draft class wasn't a great one for running backs. We talked about how Evan Silva said that this is the worst running back class that he has ever seen. And I think he might be right. And then once you look at the draft capital tied to these incoming rookies, it's really hard to argue against that. So sure enough, Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, Javonte Williams, Trey Sermon. Those were the only picks to go in the first 2 days, which is just mind-blowing to me. So out of those 4 rookies, are you excited about any of them particularly? Or is there maybe even a day 3 guy that's catching your eye? Who are the running backs out of this rookie class that you think are worth rostering in redraft?
No one. That's my short, brief answer, and I'll go ahead and elaborate on that because I'll be told I need to after this podcast is over. So Najee Harris is interesting. I like Najee Harris. I'm not overly excited about him, but if he falls to me at the right place in the draft, I'm willing to gamble. Not willing to reach, but I'm willing to gamble simply because they don't really have anyone else. Benny Snell, I don't think is the answer. Jalen Samuels isn't the answer, but they need an offensive line. And that is why I don't love it, but I do love it. Like, I think that that's the best place for him to go, but maybe not this year. I think if they can beef up their offensive line, perhaps in the future, he's going to crush it. And I'm excited for him for his future. But other than that, there's a lot of running back by committees. We already talked about James Robinson and Travis Etienne, which I don't like. Again, committee. Trey Sermon. I mean, he epitomizes running back by committee with the San Francisco 49ers. That's how they roll. That's what they do. And then Javonte Williams is going to be competing with Melvin Gordon, who is the RB1 there. I mean, let's not, mince words there. I mean, that's what it is. So unless Melvin Gordon gets hurt or something else happens, Javonte Williams would be interesting because it's less of a committee, I think, than the other ones. But no, there's really nothing super duper like Ezekiel Elliott or Saquon Barkley. It's kind of a situation because I think the players are really good, but the situation, the landing spots, but out of all of them, I will give the nod to Najee Harris. Not only do I think he's a fabulous football player, but he's just a super duper cool dude. Maybe not this year, but I'm willing to take a risk, not necessarily reach.
Yeah, I'm with you. Najee Harris, I think that he obviously, I'm not breaking any ground here, but he was the most talented of all the running backs coming into this draft. But for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I would have rather, similar to what we talked about earlier with Jamar Chase getting selected by the Bengals, I would have rather seen them stick with Benny Snell, Anthony McFarland, Jalen Samuels, one of those guys.
Anthony
Stick with them
McFarland.
and draft
Completely
an offensive
forgot
lineman.
about him. I completely forgot about him.
Kalen Balazs, another one. Like, there are a lot of running backs in Pittsburgh right now. Actually, I don't even know if Jalen Samuels is still on the roster. He might be gone.
This is how bad the situation is in Pittsburgh for me, because I completely forgot about Kalen Balazs, even though I think we talked about it last week, or I talked about it last week with somebody, totally forgot. And then I completely forgot about McFarland too. Why did they take Najee Harris? Oh my God, I'm mind blown.
And the way he is flying up draft boards yesterday, and I understand, we talked about the Packers. There's some weird stuff going on right now in Green Bay, but I was doing a draft yesterday, and I'm sitting there at the 9th pick, and Najee Harris is still on the board, which I'm not even thinking about. And I'm all eyeballing Aaron Jones, and I go, all right, well, Aaron Jones is going to obviously go at 8. I wonder who's going to drop to me at 9. Najee Harris went at 8th overall, before Ezekiel Elliott, before Aaron Jones. The Najee Harris hype train has left the building. So don't even try to get a ticket, because that has just flown out of the station, and I'm not even trying to catch up at this point. He's got a ton of talent, but I just don't see it with that lack of offensive line. So I am going to be avoiding Najee Harris. He was the first player to go off the board, or the first running back to go off the board. And I just don't know. Like, I think that he's a very good football player. We've already addressed that. But he's the 101 in rookie drafts. He's going to be the first rookie drafted in almost every single quarterback league next year. And I just don't know if he's going to do that. I do like Javonte Williams, though. And we talked, and I know you mentioned his name a little bit, but he's somebody that I'm a little bit intrigued by. I think it might be tough for him to carve out a role with Melvin Gordon there. Melvin Gordon obviously also has the first-round draft capital. They're paying him a lot of money to play there this year. So he's going to be the guy. But he's also dealt with a lot of histories throughout his career.
Yes.
And Javonte Williams has all of the building to take over and be that 3-down back immediately if Melvin Gordon goes down. So as far as handcuffs go, I think Javonte Williams has become one of the most valuable handcuffs in the league. And, he can carve out a decent role for himself this year. But looking into 2022, which I assume Melvin Gordon will be gone from Denver by then, I think that Javonte Williams is going to be an awesome value in 2022. But 2021, probably not expecting too much. Now, in the process of revisiting,
I'm gonna sneak in there real quick, because I just had a thought. So if you're playing in a keeper league too, his name might be kind of interesting when it comes to being in a keeper league, because if he is going to become the RB1 unquestioned, then you've got a super late round RB as a keeper. That's also something to consider as well. Not just for Dynasty. This does include redraft too, because we're mostly redraft people anyway. So that's curious. I didn't think of that originally, but now that you just brought that up, that kind of made the wheels start turning. They're a little rusty. Yes. So if you hear squeaking, don't judge me.
Hey, this is technically week 1 of the NFL season. Like they say, the season starts after the draft. So it's okay if you're a little rusty. We're all a little rusty right now.
I can feel
attention.
Coming out my ears. Are my eyeballs bleeding? Like, it's bad.
Yeah, March and April are really, really tough months to be a fantasy, or just a fantasy football analyst, football fan, whatever you want to call it. But, we just talked about last week how we were mentioning how terrible the running backs were in this draft class. Something else that we talked about last week was how Arizona Cardinals didn't have a 3rd or 4th round pick. So we were saying that if they wanted to draft a running back to replace Chase Edmonds or James Conner, they'd have to pony up some of that 1st and 2nd round draft capital. And sure enough, they didn't. So now we've got Chase Edmonds, James Conner. Those are the 2 running backs in Arizona. Out of those 2 guys, who are you most likely to be rostering in fantasy this year?
I'm going to go with Chase Edmonds here. And I'm going with Chase Edmonds because he has a very persnickety way of being real persistent. I know, again, more alliteration there. But he just hangs around and he does well. Like even with Kenyon Drake. So last year's numbers were a little interesting. So Drake had 239 rush attempts for just under 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. And Edmonds had 97, 448 yards, 1 touchdown. When you're looking at that, it's kind of like, man, is Edmonds really like a thing? But he also had 67 targets, 54 receptions, over 400 yards, and 4 receiving touchdowns at the same time as Drake did. So he's going to be there. And I believe his ADP will be lower than James Conner's, but there's also the longevity of James Conner that I am not sold on. So out of those two, I would like to have Chase Edmonds. I want to get him in the right place again. That's usually going to be one of my, stipulations that I throw out there, is that the draft location and the draft price, if you will, needs to be in the right spot, because he's probably going to be either a bench warmer until I know he's either going to be the starter or in a really good matchup, and then possibly my flex or an RB2 at best. So that's kind of like what you need to think about. That's what I do anyway when I'm evaluating these guys. But then James Conner has never played a full 16 games in the NFL, but over 13 games last year, he had 169 rush attempts compared to what Kenyon Drake did, which was 239. So there's some meat there. I granted two different teams, so it's not, apples to apples that we're looking at here, but there is something there for Chase Edmonds to have, even with a healthy James Conner. So for me, I would rather put my money with the person who's been more consistent, and to me, that's Chase Edmonds.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I don't really have too much to add. I mean, you crushed that. Great job, Lauren. That was a phenomenal answer.
Sprinkle!
But yeah, I'm with you. I think that I'm going to steal something from Matt Kelly here. He says this all the time. I just agree with it so much. He says, I don't hate any players. I just hate ADPs. And it's so true.
Yeah.
Like last year, I wanted nothing to do with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, not because I didn't like him or the situation I was in, but it's because he was taking a 4th or 5th round pick to draft. And now, all of a sudden, he's dropping into the late 2nd, early 3rd round. Guess who's drafting a ton of Clyde Edwards-Helaire now? It's not because I hated him last year. I was making all of these, don't draft Clyde Edwards-Helaire tweets last year, not because I disliked him as a player, but because I disliked where he was getting drafted. Now he is a screaming value to me. And when I look at the ADPs for James Conner, and when I look at the ADPs for Chase Edmonds is the one that jumps out to me as well. I think that it has become obvious that the Cardinals don't want to use Chase Edmonds as a 17-game, 3-down back. That's not going to happen. He's 5'9". He's a little guy. We don't see guys like that heavy a full season's worth of workload.
Unless you're Kyler Murray.
Yeah, exactly. But, you mentioned that James Conner has never played a full 16 games. He's been in the league 4 years. He has been injured at least one game every single one of those years. And we've seen it every single time Chase Edmonds gets that opportunity to fill in. He just blows it. So and I mean that in a good way. Like he blows it out of the water. Like he just takes advantage of the opportunity. So he's somebody with a much lower ADP than James Conner. I'm with you. I'd much rather have Chase Edmonds, wait for him to, have those few fill-in games that, are almost inevitable at this point with James Conner ahead of you on the depth chart. So yeah, I'm with you all over Chase Edmonds. Now, this is a redraft show, and obviously a lot of the talk right now is about Dynasty, and there are a lot of guys in Dynasty that are just worth picking up immediately and holding on to, whether they're starting or not. Those guys I'm talking about, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Mac Jones. If you're in Dynasty, those guys are going early because you know that eventually their opportunity is going to come. But we're talking about 2021. So are you expecting any of these guys, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, Mac Jones, are you expecting any of them to be week 1 starters for their respective names?
So we kind of touched on Mac Jones already. Trey Lance, no. I think he will come in if the 49ers are really struggling, but their offense is so dynamic that I think that they can really make up for a lack of a Jimmy Garoppolo good football game, if you will, just by all of their other explosive weapons. But the one to me that I would put my money on, and again, we're not talking about Trevor Lawrence, who's guaranteed. We're not talking about Zach Wilson, who's guaranteed.
Right.
I think Justin Fields, which we did kind of touch on already, but I think Justin Fields has the best chance out of those guys to start week 1. It's going to depend on how training camp goes. It's going to depend how preseason goes. Andy Dalton is not a young spring chicken, and they're back to preseason games, which always is dangerous. Knock on wood. We never, ever want to wish anybody injury, but that is a unfortunate fact of the matter that those things do happen. But let's say injury aside, no one gets injured. Andy Dalton's fine. Nick Foles is fine. If he impresses enough, I think they want to celebrate in Chicago. And I think they want to be like, you know what? We got it right this time. Check out how good Justin Fields is. Or they could be like, we want to make sure he's really developed before we push him out. So I don't know. I think Justin Fields has the best opportunity.
And I will give you my insight as a Bears fan. I've been a Bears fan my whole life, and I have just seen them.
He's going to tell me how wrong I am.
You're kind of right, kind of wrong. But here's the thing. I've seen this team just consistently ruin the development of good players. They did it with Cade McNown. They did it with Rex Grossman. They did it with Jay Cutler. They did it with Mitch Trubisky. It is a really tough franchise to play quarterback for, the Chicago Bears. And, they talk about this a lot, that Justin Fields, he's pro ready, but everyone says that he'd do best sitting a year. And when you look at the Bears organization, who they have in their front office, their coaching staff, and even the quarterbacks on their team, they have a lot of players that can help with the development. Matt Nagy, he played in the AFL for 7 years. He was a former quarterback coach. John DeFilippo, I believe he played at Cornell. I know he played somewhere in college, but he was also a quarterbacks coach. Bill Lazor was a former quarterbacks coach. Ryan Pace was a scout that found Drew Brees. I mean, like, all of these guys know how to evaluate quarterback talent. And then you've also got the veteran quarterbacks. You've got Andy Dalton, who's been in the league for 10 years. You've got Nick Foles, who's been in the league for 9 years and won a Super Bowl MVP. So these are all guys that can help with the development of Justin Fields if they would just be patient. Like I mentioned earlier in the show, the New England Patriots, they're a franchise that has that patience. The Chicago Bears do not. So what I expect is that Andy Dalton is going to get thrown out as the week 1 starter, and it's a tale as old as time for Chicago fans. I've seen this over and over again. They get off to a slow start, and the first time we're going to see Justin Fields take the field in action in a Chicago Bears uniform is going to be in the 4th quarter of a blowout loss. This is the Bears' MO. It's what they do. I don't know why they do it. They did it with Mike Glennon and Mitch Trubisky. Week 5, they were down by like 20 points, and they said, hey, Mitch, go have fun, and just kicked him in the butt and out into the field, and the regression began. With Jay Cutler, it was a little different for him. They traded for him. He was, starting week 1, but they didn't really do anything to build up the team around him. They just wanted him to go out there and play hero ball, and the regression began immediately once he came to Chicago. So that's my biggest fear. I want to be optimistic. I love Justin Fields. He was my second favorite quarterback coming into this league. The fact that the Bears were able to trade up for him and get him, I mean, I haven't felt this energized as a Bears fan. That being said, I'm cautiously pessimistic just because I've seen this happen before, and I don't want to see it happen again. But to answer the original question, who is most likely to see the field? I don't think we're going to see any of these 3 guys start week 1. I think that we're going to see Justin Fields be the first one to take a snap. Then I think it's going to be sometime around week 5 of a losing season. Sorry, I had to get that one off my chest. That hurt. There's a lot of emotional baggage carried along with that one.
I know.
Being
that
a Bears
sounds
fan is not
absolutely
easy.
My team divorced me, so I'm over it. So it's exhausting being a football fan, like a football fan of a team. You know what I mean? Like, you get invested, man. Like, I am a fan of fantasy football, so I like lots of players on lots of different teams. So, I mean, I love the Saints. They're like my new team, but it's not like that overwhelmingly engrossing, exhausting thing that you just had to exercise just now.
Yeah, that's the first time I've been able to get that out on a show. I'm sure if you watch, I'm doing shows all week, and I'll probably have similar rants on just about every single show. But the problem with Chicago is the Bears, they become a victim to the media and the fans. So as soon as, they get off to a 1-4 start, 1-3 start, whatever it could be next year, if they aren't winning every single game, the fans and the media are going to be calling for Justin Fields, and it's going to get so loud that the coaching staff won't be able to ignore it, and they'll have to put him out there.
Yeah.
All right. So I think we've talked enough about the draft. We've covered everything. We've talked about Aaron Rodgers a little bit too, but there is some news, like actual NFL news, that we can talk about as well. And we'll just kind of fly through this real quickly before we finish the show here. First one I want to talk about, Antonio Brown signed a 1-year, $6.25 million contract to return to Tampa Bay. Where are you ranking Antonio Brown in 2021?
So Antonio Brown for me is going to be high upside wide receiver 2, most likely a wide receiver 3 for me. I think this is going to be a better year for Chris Godwin, who should hopefully stay healthy and then continue on that chemistry progression, if you will, with Tom Brady. So I don't have him ranked super high. I just think it's great for the Buccaneers. I mean, they're literally re-signing their entire Super Bowl team. So good luck, NFL.
Yeah, and I think that, right now, Antonio Brown, we're talking about these value discrepancies that you find this time of year. Right now, Antonio Brown's average ADP is outside of the top 100, which is crazy to me. He's arguably, I don't want to say arguably the best in the ever, because Calvin Johnson, Jerry Rice, everybody, but he is one of the best quarterbacks, one of the best wide receivers we've ever seen play the game. I went back and looked at his numbers. 2013, he was a wide receiver 3. 2014, wide receiver 1. 2015, wide receiver 2. 2016, wide receiver 1. 2017, wide receiver 1. 2018, wide receiver 2. That is 6 straight years as a top 3 fantasy producer. And then he takes 1 year off, and then he comes back to play with Tom Brady. And people are acting like he is not somebody that they want to roster in fantasy. I think that's absolutely crazy. I tweeted something out about Antonio Brown yesterday saying, it's a crowded wide receiver room, but only one of those wide receivers has 6 touchdown passes in the last 6 games. Said y'all are sleeping on Antonio Brown. And Antonio Brown liked the tweet and caught a lot of flack for it. Everyone's like, you should be in the gym, spend more time working out and watching tape and less time on Twitter. He caught a lot of flack for liking that tweet yesterday. But really, I don't know why everyone's sleeping on one of the best wide receivers in NFL history, tied to the Super Bowl champs with one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history. I get it. There's some risk there, but he is all of...
No, stop. We're missing the real news here. This was your tweet that Antonio Brown liked.
Yes, and to make this even funnier, at the time he liked it, it was like 12 hours.
How cool is that?
It was like 12 hours after I tweeted it, and it didn't get a lot of traction. It only had like 20 or 30 likes or something like that. And then Antonio Brown liked it, and then it just shot into a different stratosphere. But that makes me think that Antonio Brown is sitting at home. I didn't tag Antonio Brown, though, and this wasn't like it had gone viral. So that leads me to believe that Antonio Brown is sitting at home, searching his own name on Twitter and just scrolling through every single tweet about him, because that was a deep hole he found. It was pretty funny. It happened late last night before bed. I was just like, why is this getting so many likes out of nowhere? And then I scrolled down and I was like, oh, Antonio Brown liked it. Go figure.
That was your reaction? Oh my gosh. I'd be like, oh my God, you'll never believe what happened. Because I would fangirl. I mean, that's like, that was a very calm reaction. Anyway, continue with the news.
So we talked about Aaron Rodgers a little bit earlier and his possible going to Denver. But if that doesn't happen, Teddy Bridgewater just got traded for a 6th-round pick, which seems like a crazy good value. Like if I knew Teddy Bridgewater was on the market for a 6th-round pick, I think just about every team would want to add him as at least a backup. But what do you expect now? I know last week you went to bat for your Mizzou alum, your boy Drew Lock, and now all of a sudden Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater, they're going to be fighting for the starting job. So let's just assume that Aaron Rodgers is not going to Denver. Drew Lock, Teddy Bridgewater, who's starting for the Broncos?
Okay, so I think it's going to be Drew Lock is going to be starting until he loses the job. Now, the difference to me between Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock is like herbal tea compared to like a double shot espresso. So herbal tea is Teddy Bridgewater, and the double shot espresso is Drew Lock. So high upside, high flying, high turnovers is going to be Drew Lock. I really want to see him have a full healthy year and then be able to appropriately judge when he's in his 3rd year. I believe it's going to be his 3rd year, right? I don't know, losing track of time, I'm getting old. So I still like Drew Lock. Yes, I know I'm super biased. I get it. Please feel free to judge me because I'm still not going to care. But I like Drew Lock. I also like Teddy Bridgewater. But we're talking about high flying rocket jet fuel to me, as opposed to like, composting.
That's a great way to put it. It's almost, I wouldn't say it's as extreme, but it's almost like the Washington football team going from Alex Smith to Ryan Fitzpatrick. That's kind of the flip side, because, I think that if Teddy Bridgewater is the quarterback in Denver, it is going to help the Denver team as a whole tremendously. I think that if Drew Lock is the quarterback, it's not going to so much help them win games, but it is really going to help Cortland Sutton's value, Jerry Jeudy's value, because Drew Lock is that guy that isn't afraid to just chuck it up there and let plays happen and let his receivers make plays.
And I also think that the Broncos want to prove. I also think the Broncos want to prove that they made the right decision originally with Drew Lock until Drew Lock legitimately loses the job. Because don't forget, he was hurt 4 or 5 games last year, and then only played like 5 games when he was, just coming in as his, little baby in the NFL. Yeah. So there's a lot still left on the table for him to show. And I want that to happen.
I hope I didn't completely drown you out with that gong noise of me punching my microphone there. I hope the audience was able to hear that.
Watch it.
But one last piece of news that I want to hit on, and this is because I just love Chris Carson and I want to talk about this. So we had a lot of the 5th-year tender deadline for everyone that was drafted 4 years ago just came, and we saw a lot of no-brainers: Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Sam Darnold, Saquon Barkley, Calvin Ridley. No surprise with any of those 5 guys. They all had their first-round tenders picked up for year 5, so we'll see them back with their respective teams. But a first-rounder that didn't get his tender was Rashaad Penny. So Chris Carson just got paid by Seattle. Now they're moving on from Rashaad Penny. And just so there's no confusion, Rashaad Penny will be back next year, but what you have to do is sign that. For anyone that doesn't know, you have to sign the 5th-round tender the year before. So this is basically committing 2022, and they're saying in 2022 we are done washing our hands clean of Rashaad Penny. Here's a 1st-round pick that we don't want anymore. So what does this do? Does this move the needle for Chris Carson for you at all and his value in 2021?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I've never really judged it at all based on Rashaad Penny. So this move doesn't really do much for me. This news, I should say, only because I never really saw Rashaad Penny as a huge threat. Really, what concerns me, I just want Chris Carson to stay healthy. And I think he's always been a good value running back to try to go for. And this just makes me feel safer, makes me feel better about it. But yeah, this doesn't surprise me at all. And I don't want anyone else to know, because I don't want everyone to know how good Chris Carson is. He's so quiet.
Yeah, and the thing, like, it's not like he's going to see any extra carries or any extra opportunity or anything. Rashaad Penny's still going to be around for 2021, but I think that the moves that we've seen from Seattle over the last few months just show that this team is committed to making Chris Carson the guy. So we had speculation about his fumbles, about Rashaad Penny, about DJ Dallas, Carlos Hyde. I mean, it seems like for years, people have just been finding a reason to write off Chris Carson. And I think that there's finally a little bit of, just you can kind of breathe a sigh of relief.
Yeah.
Chris Carson got paid. They're moving on from Rashaad Penny. It's his backfield now. I don't think there's any reason that Chris Carson shouldn't be slotted in as a low-end RB1. He's getting the carries. Last year, he showed his ability to get going in the passing game as well. Just as far as like a fun standpoint, I don't know if there's a player I like watching more than Chris Carson. I mean, he is just a blast to watch on the football field. So, I think that this moves the needle a little bit for Chris Carson. All you people that were hoping to get him in the 4th, 5th, 6th round, starting to squash your dreams. You're going to need a 2nd-round pick if you want Chris Carson in 2021. Now, Lauren, we did this last week, and it's something that we're going to do every week, and I love it. A big thing that you and I both talk about is helping some up-and-comers, newbies, whatever you want to call them, in the industry, get an extra spotlight. So we're calling this segment the Footballguys Spotlight. Before we sign off, let you pick it out this week. Who is it that you want to spotlight in the industry?
So there are 2 gentlemen. I'm going to do a 2-for-1 here. So I'm going to do 2 gentlemen. Yes, it is Johnny Hicks and Travis Caples. Now, they are part of the Fantasy Whispers. Let me get their handles so I just get them right. So Johnny is Johnny_Game Time, and that's JOHNNY _Game Time. And Travis is at Big Travy TFW. These 2 guys are 2 of the hardest working guys in the industry that I know. They've been at this for a while. They do this because they love it. If it weren't for them, you would not be seeing the monster that they have created, because they actually were the ones who got me into podcasting. And this was all the way back when we were just kind of messing around covering the AAF. I mean, these guys are legitimately, genuinely good people, and they have a ton of great research. There are really great follows on social media, and they're fun, and they're really, really good people. And I really wanted to shout them out because they've become very good, dear friends to me as well. So go follow them at Johnny_Game Time and at Big Travy TFW. Good people.
All right. I will be sure to do that. Those aren't guys that I'm familiar with, but I will take your word for it and give them a follow right away. Well, thank you everybody that was able to tune in to today's show. Just a reminder, this is Footballguys' newest show, 2 Point Stance. You can find us live on Twitter at 12 p.m. Eastern every Tuesday, and then we get the full video uploaded to YouTube at 7 p.m. That is YouTube.com/FootballGuysTV, and you can find all the Football Guys shows there. We've got the Audible with Sigmund Bloom. We've got the Dynasty Show with Chad and Jordan, the Dynasty Newsletter Show with Chris Adam and Adam Wilde, the Power Grid, and this show, obviously, and much, much more to come. We are going to just be flooding the YouTube page with new shows coming nonstop. Like I said, cancel your cable provider because Footballguys TV is going to be giving you everything that you need. But thanks again for tuning in. I'm Dave Kluge, and I'm here with Lauren Carpenter, and we will see you next week.